Festiie fam, the time is now. Festival goers unite. Welcome to the Festiie Files, where we highlight the creative and inspiring individuals who collectively come together and shape what we call the music festival experience. My name is Desmond Beristain, CEO and founder of Festiie, the Festival Smart Band. And today we are going to talk about something beautiful, something fun, something that we all know and love. Well, this person has brought this back to the rave community and the festival scene. He goes by the name of Slinky Josh. Slinky Josh JACOBS. I slink, therefore I am. Professional Slinky manipulator. And he has Slinky tutorials for everybody. So Slinky Josh, welcome to the Festiie Files podcast. What's going on?
Thank you, Desmond.
Yeah. So let's get right into it. So the reason why we kicked off this podcast, as I mentioned, was to highlight, everybody who plays a role in the festival community and the festival experience. And that goes from the headliner artists to people that are dancing in the crowd, to vendors, to people as yourself. Let's talk about this. What's your origin story? How did you become the MEISTER?
Oh, how did I become the MEISTER? So it all started, I think about 5 years ago. I was just innocently scrolling through, YouTube or Facebook, and I came upon a video of a Chinese guy doing some crazy stuff with a slinky. And I much later figured out his name, and I've been able to contact him since then. But yeah, I saw him doing all kinds of crazy stuff. I'm a little bit close to the camera to demonstrate, but I saw him doing all that stuff, and I was like, whoa, what is that? And I was like, this is the next big thing right here, because I'd never seen anything like that before. I'd never seen anybody work a slinky like that, as so many people have said to me. And I was like, I got to learn this. So I went out, or I went on the internet, and I tried to find a similar slinky to what I saw him using. I just like scrolling through Amazon and trying to find one that looked like it. And I paid like $15 for this big slinky. And it came and arrived, and I kind of messed around with it for like 5 minutes, and I was like, this is too hard. And I couldn't figure it out. And I kind of just set it on my shelf and forgot about it for a while. And I thought that maybe it might not be the right size or the right dimensions, because it seemed like it was just really stiff. I don't know. That was probably just my inexperience and not knowing what to do, but that's what it seemed like. And then a couple months later, I was on my lunch break from work, and I went to the grocery store across the street, and I was like, wait, I wonder if they have Slinkies here. And they did. They had a little, it wasn't called a Slinky. It was called like plastic coil spring or something exciting like that. And went and got one of those, and I was like, oh, this is a little bit different. And it was a little bit more floppy or slinky, less rigid. And so I put it on my wrist, and like 2 days later, I left for Sonic Bloom. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, you've probably heard of Sonic Bloom. Yeah. I'm sure many of your listeners have heard of it. Really cool music festival here in Colorado. And I brought it with me. And are we allowed to discuss illicit substances on this podcast? Or
yeah, you can say,
is this like the Joe Rogan podcast, or I could just say whatever the hell I want?
You can say whatever you want.
All right, sweet. Okay, so
if
basically,
you don't like it, then you have to deal with it. That's kind of that's why we have this podcast, because we're talking, we're going deep, we're sharing, we're masking the veil, we're removing the veil, and we're getting into it.
That's the beauty of podcasts.
Slinky Josh.
Yeah. So I had this slinky with me, and on Saturday night of Sonic Bloom, I ate one hit of the best acid I've ever had in my
Heyo.
life. And I had an amazing time, and I pulled out this Slinky, and I just wore it on my wrist. It fit perfectly on my wrist, and I just kind of messed around with it all night for like 12 hours. I was watching music and going like this, just like. I would try to get it to do this kind of stair-stepping thing, where I'd be like,
whoa.
And I could get it to do that like 3 times by the end of the night before I dropped it. And so after 12 hours, I could barely do anything with it, but I was a little bit better than when I started, and I could like see that it was possible to do this, and I was starting to figure it out. So after those 12 hours, I started just wearing it on my wrist everywhere all the time. And I was working at this weed dispensary, in Colorado, and we had a lot of downtime, and it was a chill place. And my boss, Carlissa, shout out to Carlissa. She let me play with my Slinky on just like here and there when there was nothing else to do. She didn't fire me, so that was awesome. And just like for a few seconds in between selling customers weed, I would just practice for a few seconds here and there, or a few minutes here and there. And I would practice on my breaks. I'd practice when I would walk to work. So I started just practicing all the time. And then before you knew it, I was getting halfway decent at it after maybe like a year or so. And then I started making YouTube tutorials, and kind of just took off from there.
Wow. So it's super cool. Like, you didn't choose the slink life. The slink life chose you. You know what I mean?
You could say that, yeah.
And that was cool. Thanks for sharing that, because it's the origin stories. Like, how did he become what he is now? And talk about that. Well, because you have a tutorial, and that's kind of your way of is that giving back and showing? Because that's pretty cool. Like, I want one. I want to throw one back here. Just have that there and just play with that in between podcasts. But how did you start getting recognition within the festival community? Because that literally, it's funny how the Slinky fits perfectly on the wrist, just like candy, and it's colorful, and it's something that, from the aesthetically pleasing, and you can do shows it's almost like you've reinvented or just added on to the gloving component of festivals.
Yeah, a lot of people have compared it to that. And sorry, what was the question?
Question was pretty much, how did you get embraced by the festival community?
Oh, yeah. So, I'd been into performing for a while. I've always loved to be a performer. In high school and in college, I was in a metal band. So I performed on stage in that aspect. And then around the time I graduated college, I discovered flow arts, and I started messing around with a staff. And then I discovered flow wand, or levitation wand, as it's more commonly known now. And that's a really cool prop that I loved, because it had this aspect of illusion to it, where your brain couldn't quite figure out what was happening. And that's the same thing I loved about the Slinky that attracted me to that. So I had been going to festivals for like 2 or 3 years at this point, and I started just looking for opportunities to perform with the Slinky. And trying to think. Oh yeah, so I made a little video of me doing some Slinky manipulation and a little bit of dancing. And looking back on it now, it's like such a it's like such a crappy video compared to where my skills are at now. But I posted that online, and then someone named Kelly Gray, she was the performance coordinator for Backwoods Music Festival when that was in Oklahoma at the time. She was like, "Hey, you should apply to perform." And I was like, "Wow, really? That's awesome. I'm going to do that." Yeah, so I I applied and she accepted me, and then I skipped Burning Man that year so I could go to backwoods in Oklahoma because it was my first opportunity to actually be a performer getting paid at a music festival. Didn't get paid much. It was like barely enough to cover my gas and food, but it was like so exciting to just have that opportunity to be on stage. So that was the first time that I was, an official performer at a festival. But ever since, even that first night that I was practicing with it, it's always just something that I find a lot of enjoyment doing at festivals and concerts and stuff. So I'm always just out there doing it, and then I end up giving mini shows for people that are interested in it. So that's kind of how I got into the performing at festivals.
Nice. And that's cool because you just said it. You started just having fun with it, recreational, like at a festival in the grass or just on the grounds, and then you got that opportunity to actually go on stage. So talk about that. Was it like, all right, the drop's coming on, bring on the Slinky guy, and then what you just do your tricks? Is it like an LED Slinky? How is it light up at night?
Dude, I wish it wasn't.
With your Slinky at night?
Yeah, so that's man, if I had a dollar for every time somebody was like, whoa, do they make LED Slinkies? I could probably afford to like have Elon Musk design me an LED Slinky. But they don't really. And I've tried so many different ways of getting it to light up. And the best way that I've found so far is just to use blue lights or UV or black lights. Just this type of plastic that it's made out of, for whatever reason, really reacts to those kind of lights, and it kind of looks like it's glowing, or it just like reflects a little bit more light than the background. So that's the way that I usually do it, is if I can have some kind of blue lights or UV lights set up and pointing at me. But in the future, to have one of these that actually lights up by itself really bright would be amazing. And I've seen a couple different Chinese dudes do something where they it looked like they put these little I don't know if you're familiar with these, like sometimes you'll find them, right? These tiny like little LED spheres that are like real tiny. Sometimes they put them in like cocktails, or you know what? They put them in balloons and like throw them in the air at concerts or festivals sometimes. So it looked like those kind of little lights, and they were attached in the middle somehow. So then you have these a few little dots of light moving back and forth as you're doing stuff with the Slinky. But the main problem with getting it to light up is that anything that you attach onto it is going to change the way it moves. So it has to be really light. Any kind of light attachments that you're going to put on there, because I've tried putting. I made this sort of like LED light ring that I like attached to each end, and that totally messed up the way it moved and made it really hard to do a lot of the tricks that I do with it. Like, let me see if I can move this back and like give it mini little.
Nice. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Here it is. So, how to slink.
So like that sort of like flippy thing. It's really, I don't know. Can you hear me when I'm this far away from the mic?
It's a little faint.
Yeah. Hang on. Let's see what I can do here.
Yeah.
But when I do this, this flippy stuff where it flips up in the air, it's to do that sort of thing is really dependent on the proportions and the weight of the Slinky, because these plastic ones are super light.
Yeah.
Like this. If to do that with a metal one, because it's heavier, you have to like throw it way higher up in the air and with more force, And any like when I put those lights on the ends, it really messed up with the way it moved and made it hard to do a lot of stuff. And I've tried to make a fire slinky before, and the same sort of thing applies. Like anything you attach to it is going to change the way it moves.
Fire slinky, like with fire, like for fire.
Yeah. So I was at Burning Man in it must have been 2017, and I was playing with the Slinky, and this dude comes running up to me, and he's like, "Hey man, I do that too. I made a fire Slinky." And I was like, "What? How did you make a fire Slinky?" There's this dude from Alaska named Roger Fire Dodger, and he told me that he took like a metal Slinky, and he took a little piece of aluminum wire or some kind of wire and attached it between two ends, like where I have my two fingers right here, so that you have this wire going across the middle. And then he said what he did was attach wicking to that wire, so then you have these little kind of little balls or points of light moving back and forth with it. Kind of like what I was saying with the LEDs earlier. And I tried to make one like that, but again, anything you attach to it, it has to be really light and strong, because it's going to change the way it moves if it's too heavy. And I tried putting a Kevlar sleeve around the whole Slinky with a metal one, obviously, but then that gave me the problem where the extra thickness caused by that having that sleeve on there made, when it's added up on all these coils, it makes the Slinky like so big, like it can't compress any further than this. And again, that totally makes it really hard or impossible to do most of the tricks that I can do. And I'm not an engineer, so there's a lot of engineering challenges here for sure. But yeah, I'd imagine someday as technology progresses and as more people get interested in Slinky manipulation, that I'd say eventually we'll get to have like a super awesome LED one at some point, but not quite there yet.
Yeah, no, but that's great. And people like yourself, people like, what's his name, Roger the Fire Dodger?
Yeah, Roger Fire Dodger.
Roger Fire Dodger, shouts out.
Yeah, shout out.
You guys are moving the needle forward, for the slinky manipulation movement. And I mean, talk about that. Do you have like slinky fun facts? Like how many coils are in a slinky? Are there different sizes? And just talk about that, because I feel like that's super interesting. And I just feel like looking at the slinky, think about it, there's that nostalgia part, right? And that's kind of like with music festivals. You go to music festivals, you hear a song, you think of a specific festival, you want to attend it every year because it makes you feel a certain way. So I'm already seeing the parallelism with the actual slinky and the representation of music festivals, because this takes you back, and you can get mesmerized by it, but it really has that nostalgia. So talk about slinky facts or slinky tips, or did you know this about a slinky?
Yes, yeah, I've got some slinky tips or fun facts up my sleeve. So the slinky was invented in 1943 by an engineer in the United States Navy. His name was Richard James, and he was working on with springs to stabilize some kind of sensitive equipment on ships. And the story goes that he accidentally knocked one off of a top shelf or something, and he saw it fall onto a stack of books and then onto the desk and then onto the floor, and there was like a light bulb that went off in his head. He was like, if I get the proportions right, maybe I can make it walk continuously. And so he tweaked that for the next 2 years before the Slinky was released in 1945. And his wife, Betty, came up with the name Slinky. She was looking through the dictionary and she found the word Slinky in there, and the official definition of Slinky is graceful or sinuous in motion or form, something like that. So that's where the name came from. And then in 1945, they I believe it was they made like a few hundred of them, and they released them in this department store. They had a display with a ramp, and they had the Slinkies walking down the ramp, and they sold them for $1 a piece, which at the time was an outrageous price. It was that's the equivalent of like $20 today.
Yeah.
But they sold out in just a matter of minutes or a couple hours. And then they used all that money and made a Slinky factory. They got a loan and they started making all these Slinkies and doing pretty well for themselves. And this is all in the 1940s, going through the 50s. And this is all before Slinkies even got big. And what was happening during all this time when they were selling these Slinkies in department stores, Richard, he's the one who technically invented the Slinky or discovered it. Mm-hmm. Turns out he was using a lot of this money from the company and sending it to this kind of cultish religious group or religious sect that he was in Bolivia. And it's like kind of vague whether it's actually would be considered a cult or just a really crazy religious sect. But he was using all this Slinky money, being obsessed with this religious group that he was with, and siphoning it off from the company. And then in 1960, he told his wife, "Hey, I'm gonna move to Bolivia, and you and the 6 kids can either come with me or just stay here. But I'm going to Bolivia." So he just abandoned his family and his 6 children to go move to Bolivia and be in this religious group and I guess translate Bibles, supposedly is what they were doing. So she was like, "Okay, I'm going to not go with you and I'm going to stay here and run the Slinky company." So he completely pieced out to Bolivia in 1960 at that point, and then that's when Betty took over the running of the Slinky company. And she's the one who's really responsible for the Slinky's success because it was her leadership that caused the Slinky commercials to be a thing. And, that's what really caused the Slinky to explode in popularity, is those commercials, which started in the 1960s and had the classic Slinky song, "Slinky, Slinky, the world's most wonderful toy. Slinky, Slinky, it's fun for a girl and a boy." And they had a lot of variations on that song throughout the decades, but those commercials were what caused the Slinky to really blow up in popularity, and sold millions and millions of those. And then, so she was the leader of the Slinky company until 1998. So she ran it for 38 years at that point, and by that time, every American child had had a Slinky. And then in 98, she was getting really old, so she sold the company to this company in, it was a company called Poof Products that made like foam toys and stuff. So the whole Slinky company passed into their hands. And then I think in sometime in the 2000s or a little bit later, another company bought that company. So the original Slinky company is just in the hands of these capitalist rich old dudes. They're just trying to make money, and I've actually tried contacting them and being like, "Hey, look at this cool stuff that you can do with Slinkies. Do you think we should maybe create some kind of course where people to show people all this cool stuff that you can do with Slinkies?" But they never responded to me. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to do this on my own then.
Yeah.
And uh, actually, like Betty James, she died in 2000 something, so she never got to see the stuff that's actually possible with a Slinky, nor did the original inventor Richard James. Um, so that's where the Slinky started and where it's at today. And I think if humans continue existing on this planet, I think Slinkies will continue existing for as long as humans are around. This might be around in 500 years. You might still have people playing with Slinkies because it's just such a simple thing.
Yeah.
Just a little spring.
And
but anyway, that's my
that's it right there. The Slinky history.
yeah.
we got to add in it was Ace Ventura though, right?
Oh yeah, the scene in Ace Ventura, I think the second one. So another fun fact. I didn't know. I don't think I'd ever seen that movie, and that first night when I was running around with the Slinky at Sonic Bloom, people kept yelling at me, "Slinky, Slinky," and quoting lines from that scene in the movie. And I was like, "What is this from a commercial? Like, what are they all saying?" And then later I found out they were all quoting that scene from Ace Ventura.
Yeah.
It's like it's like the first thing that comes into lots of people's minds when they see a Slinky.
Oh yeah, exactly. Same. And Slinkies have made it to music festivals, so they're still going, and it's great that you have people that are passionate about the Slinky and have a real bond, and it just keeps that authenticity around, even though the company itself might be past here and past there. Is that possible? So do you think that is possible, that to do like Slinkies can walk hundreds of steps if possible? Is that like a real
Yeah, I mean, so dude, I've tried so hard to find where that scene in that movie was shot, and I'm not sure if it's an actual staircase. I think they might have taken like a shorter staircase and just like shot a close up of it going down, and then added that giant background. But yeah, I mean, theoretically, there's no limit to how many stairs a Slinky can go down. If it's so, actually, the proportions of the Slinky will determine the gait and the size of stairs that are perfect for it. So,
How so?
Different. Well, so depending on the length, basically, and the size, I guess it would be more determined by the diameter and the. I don't know. I haven't done too many experiments, but like these plastic ones generally aren't that good for going downstairs. It seems like the metal ones are more specifically designed to be the right size for going downstairs. They can do it, and it really depends on the size of the stairs and the size of the Slinkies. So theoretically, you could make a Slinky to go down any size of stairs if you just made it the right size. So, if you wanted to, you could make a Slinky that was the right size to go down the side of the Great Pyramid. And I think that would be a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, the Slinky, has so much to do. The Slinky can literally, I can see it now, Slinky going viral on like TikTok and whatnot. you and the Slinky going viral, just going to different places and then doing the Slinky challenge, and all right, and then get everybody buying a Slinky and just like trying that. How has it been? So now the Slinky is like a staple for you, right? Whether you're going to a festival or performing, do you prefer like the plastic Slinky over the metal Slinky? What's your go-to?
Yeah, so the plastic Slinkies are definitely better for manipulation or doing tricks, and that's for a couple of different reasons. So the plastic ones are actually more resilient than metal, so they can stretch farther and still come back to their original shape. Like I can take this plastic Slinky and I can do this, and it's still, goes back to its original shape. If you do that with a metal one, it's going to have this permanent little kink in it,
Yeah.
like that. So they get bent out of shape really quickly. And when I'm doing stuff like this,
But
so that puts a lot of tension into the Slinky, and the metal ones just can't stand that amount of tension without getting bent. So that's one reason, and also because metal ones are heavier, so gravity is a lot more of a factor. They're less bouncy. It's harder to throw them into the air, get them to do flips and things like that. And of course, the metal ones are not rainbow, which is really the most important thing.
yeah, definitely. What's the best genre? Well, what's your favorite genres of music to like slink to? Because let's say you're at a festival, do you need like a certain type of style, or do you just rock with whatever beat and you're like, oh, I can do this, I can do this?
Any kind of music that I personally like will work. Just like it's really hard for me to even dance to music that I'm just not feeling, But just for me personally, the String Cheese Incident is probably my favorite band, or one of my favorite bands. I love going to their as many of their shows as I can, and jamming out with the Slinky. I also love. I really like stuff with a fast tempo, like
Yeah,
trance or at least like house tempo, funky stuff. I don't know. My taste in music is really kind of all over the place.
nice.
Yeah.
Hey, that's good. That symbolizes. That's another reason why we're doing this podcast. We're trying to bring in all different walks and genres and angles, and because when you go to a music festival, that's what happens, and you will see the person gloving, you'll see the person hooping, you'll see the person, with the slinky, and everyone has a story to tell. So let's talk about that and how the music festival, community has provided that platform for the slinky to keep going, right? To keep evolving and giving you that, because before that, that's what a lot of people look towards is going to a festival and show how that's provided you with the inspiration. And then what are your thoughts on like moving forward? What's the future of Slinky looking like?
Yeah. So let me ask you this: have you been to Electric Forest?
I have not, and it's so funny because
Oh,
that's like I know, man, missing out. My
yeah.
fiance has been
So,
there like 3 times, and she's like, "All right,
ooh.
that should be the next one you go to."
Yeah, dude. I was really wanting to go there this year. So Electric Forest was my first music festival. It was my first introduction to dance music and dance music culture, and I didn't know a single artist on the lineup when I decided to go. I just went because my two of my good friends went the year before, and they wouldn't stop talking about how crazy it was. So I was like, okay, I'll try something new. I'll go to this. And at the time, I was mostly listening to metal music,
Yeah.
like some like really weird electronic music, like Aphex Twin that you can't even dance to, just like
Okay.
really weird music. And Electric Forest, it was 2013. It was probably the most life-changing experience of my life. It just totally changed the course of my life, where I was, I was into metal music and I wanted to be a guitar player, professional guitar player, and I like knew that was my life course and vision. And then after that one weekend, I was like, no, I want to go make dance music and play with things and do flow arts type stuff. But highly recommend Electric Forest to anyone listening to this podcast. It's possibly the greatest music festival. It's beyond a music festival. It's
Mhm.
I would compare it to Burning Man in the and a lot of people that go to Burning Man would think that's sacrilege because it's Electric Forest is a commercial music festival, whereas Burning Man is not. Things aren't sold at Burning Man. There's no lineup. It's
Mhm.
very much a more mature crowd, whereas Electric Forest is like a bunch of kids fresh out of high school. That a lot of the crowd there is just wants to get as high as possible, and no judgment there, because that was definitely me the first weekend there, and that's something that can be a very powerful experience, and it can be good. But yeah, I don't forget where I was going with this, but just the culture at Electric Forest is super, just like everything you've been talking about so far, like bringing people together from all walks of life, all different kinds of music, and they have a performer program that I applied to this year. It used to just be a hoop troupe, and then a few years ago they started letting people from other disciplines apply also. But yeah, I would say that's a really good the ultimate example of a music festival, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've heard so much about it. It's just been growing every single year. Now they did 2 weekends, and let's shed some positivity on a sensitive topic right now, which is the fact that we aren't able to attend music festivals. And even for yourself, you said you were so stoked to go this year.
Yeah.
And you probably had some performances lined up as well. How have you been able to just put one foot in front of the other, maintain a positive attitude, and deal with everything that's kind of going on right now?
Yeah, so this whole COVID situation, I've kind of been looking at as an opportunity. I kind of flip-flop between thinking whether I'm introverted or extroverted, because I love going to music festivals and meeting people all the time, but it's also nice to just sit at home and work on stuff. And I'm self-employed. I actually get most of my income from driving for Uber or Uber Eats now, which I like just sitting in my car listening to audiobooks and jamming out to music. So my life hasn't changed that much because of my day-to-day life, because of the whole pandemic thing. But I kind of like not having the pressure to put together. I was going to go to Electric Forest and Playthink before that. Also, shout out to Playthink. It's a flow arts and music and art festival in Kentucky that's family friendly for all ages. Most of the people that go there are families with children. It's a totally sober festival, and it's a completely different experience. Completely different end of the spectrum from Electric Forest, for example, but also has a lot of the same. It has the same spirit in that it's all about experiencing life and music and celebrating life. And Playthink is more centered on learning and picking up new skills. There's classes on Slinky and all the things that you would expect at a flow arts festival, like hooping, juggling, poi. There's acro yoga, regular yoga, but they also have lots of other stuff. There's dance classes. There have even been breakdancing classes, or b-boying, I should say, to be use the correct term. And there was a class on turntablism, scratching a record. I took a class on how to. This guy brought his whole turntable setup and taught a class on how to scratch a record. But it's really awesome little festival. But where I was going with that is
called Playthink, right?
Playthink, yeah.
Playthink. Shout out to Playthink.
Shout out to Playthink. And so I've been going there for the past this would have been my 4th year, I think. Yeah, 4th or 5th, I don't know. But yeah, they were the first place to give me an opportunity to teach Slinky, or the first festival to do that. And I've been coming back ever since. Super awesome place. But it's kind of nice to not have that pressure to put together my workshops and my performance, which I was going to have to choreograph And choreography is really hard. I don't know if you've ever tried choreography, but creating choreography is, at least for me, it's super, super hard because I just have such a hard time focusing and on that sort of thing. But it's nice to not have that pressure, so I can focus on what I'm working on right now, which is creating a video course it's designed to take anyone from the level of having no idea what to do with a Slinky to the skill level that I'm at,
Nice.
basically. So I'm working on creating this video course that I'll be able to sell on my website. And then I think that's the thing that people are really looking for with the Slinky, because it's like Slinkies have been around for half a century or more, but knowing how to do this kind of thing with the Slinky, that's the part that's new.
Yes.
So that's what I'm working on right now.
Yeah, you mentioned so many good points. I want to touch upon all of them. The first one is, of course, you just mentioned it. We're at home right now, or your life hasn't been impacted too much, and super grateful for that. But one thing that you're knowing and tapping into is being still. The self-reflection, your relationship with yourself. Also, you're exploring your creative side and focusing in, right? So you're pushing out this tutorial, and we'll get to that in a second. Before that, just for anyone listening who doesn't really know what are flow arts. So just give us the rundown. What is flow art, and what makes it different than just saying, oh, that's this, or oh, that's that?
Yeah. So let's see how good of a definition I can think up here, because I think lots of people would define flow arts in different ways, but I would say a flow art is any kind of movement practice, usually using some kind of prop, whether that be a Slinky or juggling. Juggling could be considered a flow art. Juggling balls or contact juggling, or using a staff, a contact staff, dragon staff, hula hoop, poi. Gloving could be a flow art. Even I suppose you might consider dance a flow art. That's kind of like on the edge of the flow art. If I was going to draw a Venn diagram of what flow arts is, that would be out on the edge. But because it's usually some kind of movement, meditative movement practice that you do with a prop. And I would say that's a pretty solid definition.
Super solid. I like that. And now you just mentioned now you're pushing out this tutorial. So talk about the tutorial, because we would love to just spread knowledge on that. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm like, shoot, I want a Slinky, and I want to know a couple of things. So just talk about the tutorial, and then maybe if you're cool with it, you could just give us a couple, 2 or 3 basic Slinky moves and an advanced move, and just show us the name. And if that's like, are these official names? Are these names that you come up with? Have you invented Slinky tricks? Like let's just get into that whole Slinky dictionary.
Yeah. So coming up with names for the tricks is one of the hard parts of it, actually, just because I'm a very scientifically minded person, and I'm like, I try to think of it like a science. Like what would I like I want to have a very analytical way of describing these things, rather than just calling this like a woogly squiggly. Like I want to have like some names that are like descriptive and kind of tells you what it is just from the name. So right here, this is what I call the energy beam, and secret, I did coin that term. I just made it up. So if anyone comes up with a better one that catches on, go for it. But that's what I call this, and because it looks like a little beam of energy going back and forth.
Yeah.
So what's happening right here is I'm tugging on one end and then the other end, and I'm doing it with precisely the correct rhythm to where as soon as the wave of tension, so I'm creating a wave of tension by pulling on it, tugging on it, it creates this wave. If you were to watch it in slow motion, the coils would all, one by one, go over to this side, and then the natural tension of the slinky makes it want to bounce back towards this way. As soon as it is compressed all the way that it can go this way, it'll start coming back this way. And at that exact moment, that's when you tug with this hand to give it some extra energy. And then all the coils are going to stretch as far as they can this way, and then they're going to want to come back this way, and then you tug with this hand. And when you get your timing just right like that, that's how you get it.
It's
You're
hypnotizing.
getting very slinky. You're getting very slinky. But that's what causes this thing to happen. And you know what? I'm going to move this camera back a little
Here we go.
bit and see if I can get a wider angle here. Oops.
The SLINK MEISTER, ladies and gentlemen. We're getting the exclusive tutorial tidbit teaser from Slinky Josh.
Okay, so this is, like I said, this is the energy beam. This is actually the foundational move that pretty much everything else in slinky manipulation is built off of. So you have this. I'm going to move this back even further.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, okay, now you can see that table. So if I have my energy beam going here, and then if I just let go of one end,
whoa,
I can make it shoot out like that. Yeah.
Wait, I do like
Woo!
that. What? Wait, what is that called?
So I call that a bounce, because you're kind of bouncing it off of some surface, and that's the same thing as this, except that one end is no longer being gripped, and it's free to swing around like that. So if I just have a continuous bounce going like this, a lot of people, when it was funny, I was actually on I was on the Gong Show, which is this show on ABC, and it was it's like a silly talent show, like kind of like Imagine America's Got Talent, but all the acts are somewhat silly, if not completely silly, and just a complete joke. But I was on there, and then I did this to the judges, and I bounced it off their hands. And then Jimmy Kimmel was like, I could probably do that. And I was like, okay, here you go, Jimmy. And he did the thing that everybody does when they see this and they try to imitate it, which is they hold it in one hand and then they try to throw it like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, nope, that's not quite it. But yeah, a lot of people think that I'm like throwing it, but what I'm actually doing is I'm just letting it rest in this bottom hand here. So my fingers on the bottom hand are not gripping the slinky at all. I just have it resting in my hand. And then this hand stays exactly where it is. And then this other hand, I call this my grip hand, because this hand grips the slinky. And then the grip hand does all the work. So I pull in this sort of arc motion, land with my palm up. And then you notice if I just leave the hand down here, the slinky naturally wants to bounce back like that. And then all I have to do is give it a tug at the same moment that it wants to come back to help it out. And then you can get it continuously going like this.
Wow.
And then you can do all kinds of, variations on this. Like I can just have it go in this loop like this. And
wow.
It's hard to show a lot of the stuff because
this is great, man. This is amazing. What's that loop thing?
Yeah, so I'm trying to come up with these boring scientific names for them. So if I call this a bounce, and then I've been calling this a hand-to-hand bounce.
Wow.
Because I'm just using my hand as the platform. And then if I do this, I think I'm going to call this a hand-to-hand loop bounce, because I'm pulling it in this sort of loop.
Yeah.
And Actually, I'm going to put the microphone to the side for a second. So
Yeah.
see if I can show you something else.
Yeah,
a couple
go for it.
different variations on that.
I'm gonna say a quick thing for everyone at home. Now's the time, like, you know, you can buy a Slinky and then try stuff like this. You know, that's how we can keep the culture moving forward. Because imagine going to music festivals and we're emerging with all types of flow artists. Let's go back to the show here.
Yeah, so if you saw that, I was it was kind of like the loop thing I was doing, except instead of just going straight up and down,
Yeah.
I was pulling to the side. So I can pull to my left, pull to my left side, or I can pull it to my right side, laterally outwards, rather than just going in this sort of vertical loop. And that's part of what makes Slinky manipulation so cool, is that we live in this three-dimensional world where we can rotate things. Things can move forward or back. That's one dimension. They can move up or down. That's another dimension, or left and right. So most of the things that you can do with the Slinky, you can have all these different variations where you move it around in all these different dimensions, and it creates this practically, it's not an infinite number of possibilities, but it might as well be infinite for how long it takes you to learn each one of these different variations.
Are there glow-in-the-dark Slinkies? Because I feel like, what about a glow-in-the-dark Slinky? Can't that be done without manipulating the weight or affecting the weight?
Yeah, that can totally be done. So I've seen some, this company in China made some that look like they're pretty good. I haven't got my hands on any yet, but the one I used to use and I used to sell, it was a bit smaller, and it said glow in the dark, but it had to be like completely pitch dark for you to just see the tiny amount of glow that this thing created. So that one is kind of a little bit disappointing, but there's definitely a lot of room for improvement as far as glowing Slinky technology.
Oh, this is hype. I love it, man. How can we support the Slinky movement? Well, most importantly, you know, we want to be able to support Slinky artists who are really passionate about what it is, because that's the thing right now. We're all trying to support artists, whether you're making music or you're creating paintings or you're putting out Slinky tutorials, and just trying to keep that going, because we want to preserve the culture. And it's important that although we can't physically attend festivals, we're still, you know, incorporating the festival spirit in our everyday lives.
Yeah, so I have a website, slinkyjoshesmagicsprings.com, or if you go on my Instagram, it's just Slinky Josh, or my Facebook. If you search Slinky Josh, it'll all pop up. But yeah, on my website, I sell Slinkies. Magic Springs, since it's not technically, legally speaking, a Slinky. But this one, I call this the big boy because it's a little bit bigger than the standard one. This one is the size that I've been using recently. My friend Maurice Amy turned me onto these. Shout out to him. He's another awesome Slinky manipulator. I taught him the basics a couple years ago, and he's gotten really good at it.
Nice.
But yeah, these are a little bit bigger, which makes them better for performing, since it's a bigger visual impact, especially if your audience is far away. So then I have these. I call this the Squinky because it's square Slinky. So you can do all the same stuff with this guy. It moves a little bit faster because it's a little bit shorter. So one thing I didn't mention in that little mini lesson was that every Slinky has a unique rhythm that it wants to move at. So like I said, I create this energy beam by pulling at precisely the correct time. And so a longer Slinky, it's going to take longer for that wave of tension to move through it. And a shorter one, it's going to be shorter. And actually, if you look at these two here, so this square one is actually a little bit longer or taller than this one, but the square one actually moves faster because it has thicker coils. It's probably hard to see on there, but I'll demonstrate real quickly. So if I take the round one, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. That's the rhythm of that Slinky. And then if I take this square one, right, left, right, left, right, left,
Oh
right,
yeah.
left, right, left. So it's a little bit faster, which makes it slightly harder to use, but your hands will get used to that. It's all
It's the
just
BPM, right? If you're
yeah, the
singing
BPM.
to faster BPM, there you go.
Yeah, so it's actually funny. Trying to sync up my slinking with music, it doesn't always work out because if the music's not in the right tempo, it's got to be like just the right tempo for it to perfectly sync up. But anyway, so the square one can do all the same stuff as the big boy, except it can also do this.
Whoa. What?
So that's just like a cool little novelty thing. And then why don't you talk for like 30 seconds? I'm going to go grab a regular sized one so I can show you that.
Yes, yes. Everyone, I hope you're having a nice, fun stay home. To me, this is just sharing. It's super cool to see this. And like I said, this is why we want to spotlight this. Like when you're at a festival, you're immersed in everything going on, which is great. But there's so much cool stuff going on. So just the ability for us to highlight these stories, and each of us has one, is cool. Like I definitely want a Slinky. So Slinky Josh, man.
Hell yeah. Yeah, so this is the, on my website, this is the one called the original Rainbow Magic Spring. So this one is a little bit smaller than these two, if I put them next to each other. So this one is a little bit smaller, and this is, I think this is like the best all-around size. It's great for beginners. It's small enough that even kids can grab the whole thing, usually, if they're I find that kids about like age 7 and up can usually get a good grasp on it. But this is the one that I was using for a couple of years before I switched to this slightly bigger one, and it's very versatile. You know, you can do all these same tricks, and it's not so big that you know, it's hard to grab the ends.
Yeah.
Especially when you start doing some more advanced stuff, like when you start doing this flippy stuff.
Wow.
Hang on, let me do another little demonstration here.
Hey.
Yeah, wow. So it's very flippy. Thank you.
That was awesome, dude. Yeah, I want to picture my little sister and myself.
Yeah, so I sell all those on my website, and if you go on there, if you buy one, you will be added to my email list as long as you consent to that, and then you'll be the first to know when I finally release this new video course that I've been working on for so long. It's probably at least a few months out still, but yeah, you'll be and if you buy one of these, if you buy one off my website, you'll be able to access that at a lower price than when I release it to the general public, because I'm probably going to need to get feedback on it and tweak it a little bit. But yeah, so you can pick one of these up, Slinky Josh's magicsprings.com, or just Google Slinky Josh, and you'll be able to find my store from my Instagram, Facebook. Oh, and also I made a Facebook group called Slinky Manipulators of Planet Earth. So if you're on Facebook and you're interested in slinking, go join that group. And then there's people it is actually an international group at this point. There's only like 400 people in it, but there's like a guy in Taiwan, there's a guy from Korea, there's a guy from Brazil in there. And when I started doing this, there was nobody else. There was just like, I saw that one Chinese guy, and me, and that was it. But now it's it's slowly starting to spread across the globe, which is very exciting.
Dude, it's super exciting to see, and like it's just so cool how it literally fits hand in hand, pun intended, with the music festival culture and scene. Like it's colorful, it goes on the wrist, it's flow art. It's like I'm almost like, damn, why haven't I seen this more at music festivals? But it looks like that's going to change. And hey, who knows? By the time with your course coming out, the videos and content you're pushing out, there could be a whole wave, a new wave of integration into music festivals. We can get back out there whenever that is. It might be a year from now, it might be 6 months from now. But then having just like squads, Slinky Squad, like I'll rock one. I'm
Yeah.
trying to, but I got to start somewhere. So last question before we let you go is just what's that final message? You got the Slinky, you're on stage, they pass you the mic. They say, for all our live streamers at home, how can you give us a message? What's your message to the community?
If you believe that you can do something, you can do it. And a lot of the times, convincing yourself that something is possible is the hardest part of doing something. But anyone can learn Slinky. I firmly believe that. I saw a video of a 9-year-old kid doing this, like really well. He was pretty good at it. He was only 9 years old. And, there's videos out there of people with no arms that learn to play the guitar beautifully with just their toes. So the human body is an amazing, incredibly adaptable thing, and you can learn anything you set your mind to. It's just a matter of practicing a lot every day, just a little bit every day, and celebrating, getting excited about getting a little bit better. And don't get frustrated. Don't compare yourself to other people and be like, oh, why aren't I that good? Compare yourself to who you were yesterday or 5 minutes ago, and just work on being a little bit better every day. That's what I would say.
Amazing. And just to piggyback off that and give you an additional, how is the Slinky like life?
Oh, this is like, I feel like this is a riddle. Like when you're like a sphinx that asks me a riddle in order for me to pass the bridge. How is the Slinky like life?
Can I give you my rendition?
Yeah. Tell me yours, please.
All right. So because this is just coming firsthand, I have not even seen a Slinky in years. So this was just brought a lot of joy just to see you doing tricks with it. But when I look at the Slinky, and the reason why I think about life, and I'm just going to use the particular ones that I've seen here, all different colors. So it's diverse. It's a mixture. It's ups and downs, right? It's loops and turns. You can stretch it out. You can formulate it. Like you said, it moves forward, back, so many different directions. But if you can just focus, you can make beautiful things happen with it. And there is just so much to be appreciative of, right? And boom, that's the Slinky. What do you thinky about that?
That was beautiful, Desmond. Beautifully said. I don't know. You might have covered it there, man. I mean, yeah. So okay, let me. I'll say this. So the Slinky was completely underrated for 65 years, something like that. It took until somebody discovered that you could do all this crazy stuff with it. Like people thought it was just good for going down the stairs. Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot I didn't do this one yet.
You're telling the story with the Slinky. It's amazing.
Yeah. So people thought it was only good for going down the stairs for like 65 years before one guy discovered that you could do all this incredible stuff with it. And I think that's a nice analogy for it could be an analogy for a lot of things. Never underestimate yourself or other people, or there's way more potential in most things than most people see. We only see the surface level, and it's to be able to think and use things in new ways is a very, very valuable skill and way of looking at the world, I would say. And also, maybe you're like a Slinky. Maybe you've been doing the same thing for 65 years, and you're tired of it. And maybe you have way more potential than you think you do. And don't be afraid to try something new and experiment. And maybe you'll, find something amazing.
Beautifully said. There it is, everyone. We're all at home. We feel confined. Just like the Slinky was confined for years. It felt confined. You make that decision. You're like, I'm not confined. I'm going to do this. I'm going to try this. I'm going to experiment this. I'm going to explore. And I'm going to be better for it for the future. We're all in this together. We are all in this together. Slinky Josh, find him at Slinky, SLINKY,
Yep.
JOSH.
Yep.
And thank you for joining us, Festiie Files. My name is Desmond Beristain. Peace, love, unity, respect, and Slinky.
Woo! Thanks for having me on, Desmond.
Woo!